Just a quick note before we begin. If you find meaning or comfort in these conversations, consider becoming a supporter of the Don't Forget to Breathe podcast. Your support helps keep these stories alive and makes it possible for others to find hope in their own grief journey. For as little as $3 a month, your support goes to offset costs associated with production. You can learn more on the information page for this episode and by clicking on the link, Support the Show. Welcome to Don't Forget to Breathe. I'm Bruce Barker, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kristin Glenn. Today, we're talking about something many grieving parents experience, but rarely admit out loud. There comes a moment, maybe months later, maybe years later, when you laugh again, or you feel a moment of lightness, and almost immediately another feeling shows up right behind it: guilt. A quiet voice inside that says, "How can I feel happy when my child is gone?" For many parents, joy can feel like betrayal. Like if we allow ourselves to experience happiness again, we are somehow leaving our child behind. Both Kristin and I have lived through that moment after losing our children. And what we've learned over time is that grief and joy don't cancel each other out. Sometimes joy is simply life finding a way to exist alongside the love and the loss we carry. So today, we're going to talk about that tension, the guilt, the confusion, and the slow realization that maybe joy isn't a betrayal after all. Hey, Kristin, so, we're talking about when joy feels like betrayal, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts about I lost my funny. Like I'd always been, that was a comment, that people had said, and because I was always a funny guy, and then I just felt like I lost my funny. And then at some point there was a time when, and I couldn't give you a specific time, date, anything like that, but I just remembered as the first time I laughed after Kristin had died, and then had that, like this immediate emotional whiplash and feeling like, what did I do? That it felt like betrayal. Like, how could I laugh when she's not here? I remember catching myself that and questioning, am I allowed to do that? Did you have a moment like that after Zach died? Something that you can remember when the joy, and depending on where we are in our grief journey and where our listeners are, joy catches up with us, but then it catches us off guard. It
really does.
Did that happen with you?
Yeah. Mine's pretty vivid, I would say, Bruce. It is. I was very young when Zach died. We hadn't planned on really having any other children, maybe ever, or for a long, long time. And yet when he died, I felt very compelled to refine that identity. And we did what everyone said not to do when you're grieving and made big changes. We moved, we had another pregnancy, we, made a lot of decisions. And I remember being at the baby shower for this next baby, and everybody was kind of over the top excited about this next baby. And it made me angry because I felt like this doesn't fix me. Don't feel like this is going to be what makes me whole, what makes me not miss my son. I want this baby desperately, but this is just his sibling. It is not his replacement. And I had been even upset that we were having a baby shower, because I think after you go through these types of tragedies, just to think that I didn't even believe that I was going to ever hold another baby.
Yeah.
I was in my mid-20s, and it just seemed impossible that I was ever going to have that level of joy. And I remember being at that baby shower that they were hosting for me, and everyone seemed so over the top happy. And then I caught myself thinking, I am happy.
Okay, Kristin, tell me more about that, the feeling with the baby shower that you were resentful, or you didn't want it, or did it?
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was canceling out?
Oh,
Um,
that's good. That's exactly like an accounting sheet. It was somehow I felt like people that hadn't lived this somehow felt there was a debit and then now there was going to be a credit or something
yeah.
weird, like a catch up. And I didn't want to be viewed as a first time mom. It's like I've done this. I'm having to rewind my life to this pregnancy and newborn time. And I am a mom of a nearly 4-year-old. So even having, a lot of times women don't even have baby showers for a repeat baby. And yet it was just this over the top excitement from well-meaning, loving people. But it kind of caught up to me. I remember in the shower feeling like I am so wanting this baby. I'm so blessed to be able to be pregnant. I knew people that was never a reality for and wanted it. And so I remember that like last month of the pregnancy, finally going, well, I might as well let this joy in. It
Mm,
seems to be surrounding me, but I spent the first months and months and months just rejecting it. I think rejecting it because I was trying to protect myself. How dare let joy in because it can be taken in an instant.
yeah.
I think I was rejecting it because it felt like a betrayal for my love for Zach. I think I was rejecting it because I was surrounded by people that seemed much more excited about this baby than they ever did with Zach's pregnancy.
Mm.
And that I resented that.
Like it was a little
Um,
over the top, like it was very
yeah,
intentional and not
yes,
natural.
didn't feel natural. Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So this topic really does bring up those memories of just feeling so conflicted about allowing joy in, really, really wanting this next baby, but needing the universe to say, this is a next baby. This is a sibling. This is not a replacement. At the baby
Right.
shower, there wasn't one mention of Zach.
Mm,
There wasn't one moment where people would say something along the lines of, oh, Zach's baby brother or baby sister is
yeah.
being born, which would have happened if he was alive.
Hmm.
And I wanted this baby to be viewed as the next part of our family, not a restart or something. But I did let joy in and I did feel really, caught off guard by that, and felt guilt, oohing and awing at the baby shower and really getting into that.
Mm,
And then, just kind of leaned into it. I think that was a really turning point for me of realizing I don't want this baby to not be surrounded by the same joy that Zach was at this
right.
at this developmental time of his life. He could not have been and wanted more when I was pregnant. And then he was surrounded by so much joy for every minute he was on this earth. And I thought how unfair it would be to this next baby to bring this baby into a world of sorrow, into only sorrow. I knew I would, you know, hold her and cry tears on her all
Sure.
the time, but I just know how much a mother's well-being emotionally and hormonal releases and everything impacts baby's well-being. And then that also became like guilt of, if I'm this full of sorrow, I'm going to impact this baby's ability to be happy later in life, and she doesn't deserve that.
Interesting. Because you have a medical background in this whole arena with, as you were
Yeah.
just saying, with these hormonal releases and
Yeah, I work in women's health. I'm not a clinical person, but I've worked in that area for 30 years. So I definitely do know that's a real thing.
interesting.
That the stress hormones and everything definitely increase the baby's stress hormones. And there was a aha moment where I thought, I don't want to do that.
Wow. So let me ask you, why do you think joy feels so uncomfortable to grieving parents early on? I mean, is it guilt? Is it loyalty or something else? What do you think that is?
Probably both, don't you think? I think it is like, how can I be joyful? People will think I'm not missing them. I will forget them. These worries of the vividness of them fading. Also, I think there's some guilt in they didn't get to experience this. Why am I standing on the ocean and they didn't get to see this? Or taking this next baby to Disneyland, he didn't get to go to Disneyland. I think there's some of that. And it's like you and I've talked about, we grieve for ourselves, but we also grieve for our children, that their lives, that chapters were taken out of their lives that were supposed to be full of so many things. So do we go on to live and take them along with us? I think that's started kind of being where I want to be in this next chapter of my life. Is I want to feel as much joy as possible because I want to take him with me. But I think early on it was like, I can't experience things because he didn't get to. What about for you? Where do you think it landed?
Yeah, I think guilt for sure. And I think this sense of loyalty, why grief can feel like some form of loyalty, like that you need to hang on to it.
Yeah.
And if I'm feeling joy and I am healing in the healing process on the emotional side, that it's tied to how it was for me, like tied to that love and suffering being tied together. Like, okay, if I'm feeling positive, then I'm being disloyal to Kristin. That took a lot of work. It took therapy to get to the point of separating that it had nothing to do with loyalty. I wasn't dishonoring her because I went and enjoyed something, that it wasn't a betrayal of her.
And isn't that interesting how different that is? For me personally, it's been very different with other losses in my life. Another really significant loss in my life was the loss of my father, who my dad was just my best buddy. I really was so close to him. And when he died, I didn't feel any disloyalty when I was happy. I felt like he would really want that. Like, I felt like I was honoring him by being joyful.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because it's such a reversal, this loss of our children, that, we have children hoping we'll get to see them enjoy all that life has to offer, to have the most beautiful, happiest, connected life possible. And we feel those things about our children where, we want our parents to be happy, but we don't feel it as deeply as we do with children. So maybe it's because I don't feel disloyal to my grandma, my dad, other people I've lost when I'm happy.
Right. It almost feels like when the pain softens, does that mean love is softening too?
Right.
And again, for me, this was early on. And I know that that's not the case now, but early on, and I think early on for parents that are listening to us early on in their journey, that it can feel that way. And that's why we're talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's this, and we've heard this, we've talked about this term over it. And I wonder if, because we hear this so much in society, and if we start to feel positive and we start to feel joy, does that mean we're over it? Or do we feel like we're sliding into this little trap?
Yeah.
I mean, that's only, and I know that that's not true, but emotions and feelings are real.
For sure. I remember meeting with a mom and she said those words of, I just feel like I must suffer. I must continue to suffer because I loved him with my whole heart. And if I'm not suffering when he's not here, how can I appear to have any joy? And I think there's some judgment from outside folks. I think that same mom was the one that said that she went to work one day and her boss said, "Oh my goodness, you look great." And she had kind of done her hair or put makeup on. And her boss said something along the lines of, "I'm so glad you're better. And I'm so glad that, that you're not feeling so sad," or whatever. And she said that was the last day she put makeup on. She said, "If I need to look like a grieving mother for people to believe that I'm a grieving mother, bring it on. I'm not gonna try to have this kind of mask on." But I think people around us are looking for any visible signs that, are you over it? Are you better? Are you safe to approach? Yeah. Kind of thing.
And I don't think her situation and her feeling is unique, because don't you think that parents sometimes feel like they have to stay visibly sad to prove how much they love their child. Like, is that a role that guilt plays in that? Like,
Yeah.
instead of just feeling your feels and how,
Yeah.
and there's moments of joy. And as we've talked about in previous podcasts, joy and grief being hand in hand and being in the same moment sometimes. But that took a lot of work to get to that point, to realize that. So especially early on, that you just feel like you have to stay visibly sad, like in her case.
Yeah.
I don't think she's a unique case. I think she's the standard.
I do too. And I think that was one of the beautiful things that could happen in support groups is for people early on to be able to witness people that had losses, maybe years ago, and see that this has become a forever part of who they are. And they started the meetings by talking about some joy in their lives. And I think it felt sometimes very bizarre to newly grieving people because it's all encompassing in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's every thought, every minute, every breath. It's all I could think about. It's all I could feel. It was my first thought, my last thought, my every minute thought. And then now to feel like it's just as big of loss in my life. The jar has kind of gotten bigger,
And I don't think it's certainly not a quick thing. And I know, we had a previous episode that we talked about time doesn't heal, but there's a place in this journey that time plays a factor in. And I think, and tell me, if you agree or disagree, but joy returning isn't just suddenly it's all there.
No.
It's like trickling in a little bit at a time in little ways that maybe at first we don't notice. And then maybe we starting to allow it in instead of closing the door to it. But early on, for sure, not interested in that. But as time along our journey path, I guess is maybe a better way to say it, when joy can creep in and trickle in a little bit at a time.
And I think the realization of knowing that it just didn't take away the grief.
Right.
Because you and I both know that we're not going to give up our grief. It is forever a part of us. So it's not that there's an equation that now this much joy equals less grief. It's just,
right.
Oh, now I have joy and just as much grief. But it makes my life feel more worth showing up for every day. It makes me feel like I want to survive instead I have to survive. And we learn that the companion of grief is forever present, and that we can also have on the other side of us sitting the companion of joy, and that they can all be part of every decision we make, every vacation we go on, every sunset we watch, because we're longing to share it with our children. And no amount of suffering that we do is going to bring them back.
Right. It's not like it's on a scale. You've got joy on one side of the scale and grief on the other. And then we know that joy doesn't replace grief. And we learn to live with them being side by side. And we've discussed that in previous episodes. So basically, if you want to look at that scale, on one side, there's joy and grief. And on the other side, there's joy and grief. They coexist.
Good. Yeah, no, that's good. Instead of viewing it as like a scale that you have one on one side and one on the other, it's like, here they are together and here they are together.
Right. It did take time, but again, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't time healing. It took time to realize and took time to accept and to be in a place where I could understand that joy and grief were together and were going to always be together.
Absolutely.
I know we talked about this before, about thinking about what our children would want for us.
Yeah, I'm interested to dive into that because your child was so much older than mine. So when people said to you, Bruce, Kristin would want you to be happy. Kristin would want you to find love. Kristin would want you to be healthy. Whatever words they said, Kristin would want fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
How did that land with you?
It didn't land well early on because, again, I hadn't done any work on my grief. I was angry thinking that the arrogance of them thinking they knew what Kristin would think.
That's what I was
Now,
wondering.
later on, I mean, I understand, and they were well-meaning with what they were saying. Do I think that as time has gone on? Sure. And I can look back to go, she probably did think that, I don't know, a week after, and going, okay, Dad, I want you to feel joy. I know you're not going to right now, but that's what I want.
Yeah.
But it took me time to get there. And for me, it was years to get to that place of knowing and accepting that she does and continues to want the best for me. And that's, we talked about and I'll keep referring back to other episodes because there's so many of these things that cross over.
Yeah, they're so intertwined for sure.
Yeah, just knowing that she would want that for me, does want that for me, and decisions that I make now and living my life now, many of those thoughts and decisions are with her in mind. Almost as if we have a conversation. And I go, what do you think? So I take her into account, and I take her into consideration with how I live my life and the influence that she continues to have on me.
That's beautiful. I too resented those comments in the beginning. One, because like you said, it felt that I think arrogance was a good word choice that you had of don't pretend to know what Zach would want. And also because he was so young, don't project these very adult thoughts towards a toddler. He didn't think profound thoughts about his mom's happiness. He didn't think anything other than his really own happiness, because that's what toddlers are supposed to do. So they not only kind of were putting thoughts of what Zach would want for me, but they were making him a different age or maturity than he truly was. He was just a little boy. He wasn't having big boy thoughts yet. He was just a toddler. And so it didn't feel like an honoring of him. But now it's profound for me. It's something I think about a lot. I've done a lot of things in my nonprofit work and my grief work that I feel his presence. I feel him saying, let's give it a try, Mom. Let's leave this behind. This is no longer serving you. It's okay. Let's go, you and me. That feels so beautiful to have him accompanying me and guiding me. And I don't mind now thinking about that. But in the beginning, it was a painful thing. It was also kind of a forced, quick, be happy. Zach would want you to be happy.
Sure.
And I heard one, I think it was a dad at a couples retreat that I facilitated say, I think he'd want me to be pretty sad. His teenage son had died and he was like, no, I think he'd want me to be pretty upset for a long time because he'd be pretty upset if I died. So let me be sad. And I was like, yeah, that's good too. That's reality, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that just we as human beings sometimes, we want permission. Some people don't. But we kind of want permission to do things if we're not sure if it's the right thing.
Right.
And I think that's where we are in this, is because of where you and I are on our journeys and what we have seen and what we have experienced during that journey to get us to this point that we know that joy is not betrayal. We know that the moments of happiness that we have don't cancel out grief, that they're together. And we know that our children, they remain part of our lives. As you just pointed out, and as I had said, they're part of that decision making. So there's going to be joy along that way as well. So I think it's about giving yourself permission when you're ready, giving yourself permission to feel joy, because it's not betrayal. Doesn't mean you're going to have those little pings of guilt, especially the first time, or pings of, being disloyal the first few times. But as the journey continues and the healing, as we've talked about, is a verb, as that continues, you will begin to feel the joy without the guilt and feel the happiness without the guilt, because those feelings, the feelings of peace and or happiness, doesn't mean your child's forgotten, because they are with you the whole time.
Well, and I feel that Zach was our first child and only at the time of his death. And I feel like he taught me how to embrace joy. I'd never had joy like what he taught me was available. So it feels like it's almost a betrayal not to take his lesson of, Mom, this is how to be fully present. This is how to really see life from a little boy's 3-year-old perspective. I'm going to teach you how to find joy in everyday things. And now part of me feels like maybe it was a betrayal the times I didn't find joy. Maybe my sadness is more of a betrayal to him than the joy actually was, because he taught me that.
Yeah.
He taught me joy. He gave me more joy than I'd had in the first 2 decades of my life. I'd never experienced joy like being his mommy.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the greatest way we can honor them is to continue to live and to allow as much joy, as you said, to seep in as possible.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. So to our listeners, I mean, if you're listening today and you felt that moment of guilt when happiness appeared, you're not alone. Every single one of us, I believe many, if not all, grieving parents experience that. And we've mentioned this before, but maybe in this particular subject, and if it really resonates with you, if you want to share your story and introduce your child to the world, we invite you to reach out. You'll find all our contact information we'll talk about after the episode. But joy isn't a betrayal of our children. It's the love they gave us, and it's still finding a way into our lives. As we close this conversation, maybe this is what we hold on to. That moment when joy shows up and catches you off guard, it doesn't mean you're leaving your child behind. It doesn't mean the love has lessened or that the grief has faded. It simply means you're still here, and life somehow is still finding its way to you. Grief and joy were never meant to compete. They were always meant to coexist. So if you felt that guilt, that hesitation, that quiet question of, am I allowed to feel this? Please know you are not alone. And maybe, just maybe, allowing joy isn't a betrayal at all. Maybe it's just one of the ways we continue to carry them forward. Thank you for being with us today. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take care of each other. And please, don't forget to breathe. One more thing. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. We are not licensed professionals, just parents who've experienced unimaginable loss. This isn't meant to replace help from a therapist, doctor, or other mental health professional. If you're struggling, please reach out to someone qualified. You are not alone. You can also contact us by going to the show notes and click on Send Us a Text, or you can visit us at our new website, don'tforgettobreathefoundation.org. Feel free to email us at support@don'tforgettobreathefoundation.org. That's support@don'tforgettobreathefoundation.org.